Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of AACRAO's Credential Chats. And this week we are joined by Michael Pierick. Michael is the Director of Strategic Initiatives with the Professional and Continuing Education wing of the University of California, Merced campus. Michael, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Noah. Thanks for having me.
I mean, I'm just really excited to dive in here, Michael, because at UC Merced, you are, I think we said right before going live, not trying to be all things to all people, but trying to be for all people, a whole lot of different things that meet their needs. And so, maybe by way of introduction, you could just kind of share, what you're doing at the extension, campus at UC Merced to, meet all these different kind of learning constituencies.
Absolutely. UC Merced pays professional and continuing education. We're one of nine campuses that have this extension type unit that is essentially a bridge between its campus and our UC system to our regional communities. And so it's all about creating new transformative learning experiences that people in our region, traditionally non-matriculated students, they could be employed or underemployed, incumbent workforce to really upskill and reskill. And we do that through a variety of mechanisms from certificates and other forms of micro-credentials, digital badging, workshops, long-term programs, and in some cases, stackability into degree programs later down the road, advanced degrees, undergrad degrees. But we really are focused, particularly for UC Merced, on our central San Joaquin Valley from Bakersfield to Stockton, really thinking about where are the gaps in labor market data, what are listening to our employer partners and to our regional industries about what's missing from their workforce, or what does their current workforce need to get to that next level, especially as our things are shifting in the focus with AI and all these digital transformations that exist. And so thinking about how do we create these learning experiences that are tied to what they need in order to learn and obtain. So maybe it's not a traditional 16-week semester program. Maybe it's an online accelerated. Maybe it's in different languages. Maybe it's a boot camp or custom corporate education for a particular employer, and even to the points of building talent pipelines. So thinking about where we're headed, what do we need to train in terms of just high school students and pathways into degree programs, but then from degree programs out into the industry. And so as we see the industry shift, how do we introduce, undergraduate students or graduate students and other people into those pathways so that they're workforce ready, and creating those unique experiences for them to gain those skills, and hopefully land those jobs or upskill and promote into those jobs.
Oh man, Michael, I feel like if we were paying post-secondary education buzzword bingo, we just like got blackout there on all the things, between pathways, stackable credentials, access. I really kind of want to focus on that access because that's something that I hear you saying from all these different points of view, whether it's, you know, people who are past high school but not currently matriculated to, maybe in high school and trying to figure out what does, the path to their successful future look like, to people who are already, part of the UC Merced learning community. It sounds like access is just really a huge focal point there and trying to make it meaningful to them and doing it in ways that we can actually create record of in meaningful ways. And so, I don't know if you want to pick one in particular, maybe you mentioned workforce and workforce readiness. Maybe that's a good place to start. And I know before we went live, you said that you actually, as part of the many hats, you wear, handle HR in your own unit. So maybe that's a good place to start. Just what are some examples of how this can look that get you excited?
Yeah, so I can. One exciting example we've had this last year, and where external pressures or other environments are influencing an industry. An example of that is in California. There's this, for the last couple of years, this recognition of a community health worker, and so there's this new role within healthcare that now Medi-Cal, recipients can receive services, and essentially from the employer side, they can then bill for those services that were provided, and so that has a particular certification, a set of standards that the industry, in this case HCI, has set forward as like these are the things they need to demonstrate in order to provide those adequate services to a region. And so we worked with our local county public health department who had some existing curriculum that were doing some one-off trainings. But then we also brought in advisory board members from other entities like our UC Merced Health Sciences Research Institute, to other employers that benefit or leverage the use of CHWs. And we built this certificate program, which in this case was a non-credit certificate that we then translated into English and Spanish and are offering it online as well in corporate custom settings so that people can access the content and the courses in a variety of manners that leads to that certification that the state will recognize. And we've had opportunities where particular organizations have found a lot of benefit to increasing the usage of CHWs. And so the Central California Alliance for Health, a local health network, came back behind it and said, here's some workforce development funding to make sure that we're expediting and accelerating the process to many of our incumbent healthcare workers to upskill them so that they meet those certifications. And then the healthcare systems are not only providing greater access to healthcare through health navigation, but then they're also being able to increase their bottom line. So to support them as an organization as things shift from increase of minimum wage and things like that within different industries. So it's really helping not only the learner, but also the whole ecosystem of people that will allow that kind of environment to thrive through that different type of programming.
Man, an ecosystem is just my personal one word for sure. So I love to hear you saying that. And one of the other things I know you've talked about is with the pathways and not just thinking about what's immediate next, but more intermediate term and long term what's next. And that's where stackability can come in. One of the things you talked about healthcare navigation, well, there's going to be transferring some of those skills to other types of future navigator work. And so it sounds like, and that's probably not a real world example yet, but it sounds like you're already thinking about, how might pieces of these things that maybe right now are a non-credit pathway in way that we're meeting the learning community could later be a way of engaging you to potentially matriculate in something that is, actually degree seeking.
Absolutely. We have a few different programs that have some built-in capacity where they're helping either undergraduate students learn a skill set that's demanded by an industry or an emerging industry, like additive manufacturing. And so all of our instructors, it's worth saying, almost all of them are subject matter experts, but they're practitioners in the industry. So they're people actually delivering these type of skills or services or supervising people, potential employers or hiring managers. And they're the ones teaching the bulk of the people that are in our programs. And so when they're learning from those individuals, they're learning directly where the shift of that industry might go to. And so in this particular case, we have a course that's designed for a non-matriculated student, an engineer in an industry, to learn about the new design principles behind additive manufacturing, which is 3D printing for mass scale. And so it's this new emerging, it's been for a while, but there's a lot of new capabilities, especially with AI involved with it. So we're teaching them how to basically land an entry-level job or walk into a company who has additive manufacturing and be able to do it. Whereas before, when we built the program, it took almost 2 to 2.5 years to actually onboard an engineer into that skill set to be able to thrive and actually do some of those jobs. And so we've created it in a conscious oriented capacity with our campus's mechanical engineering department to say, how can we make sure that our undergraduate students have access to this curriculum so that the time they're graduating, they're also workforce ready for a space in additive manufacturing, which applies to multiple industries, not just manufacturing, like advanced manufacturing, but also in places like aerospace and engineering. So there's a lot of cross-sector collaboration there. And so that's where there's opportunities for students to think about those pathways. And in another capacity is the degree plus notion, where someone can earn a degree and then with a certification or another specialization can lead to an opportunity to put emphasis on a certain skill set that they have. And so we've worked in particular, as another example, with our Center for Analytic and Political Engagement here at UC Merced, who's really driving the next future civic leaders in our region, in particular the state of California, as they anticipate this kind of max exodus of retirees from the government workforce. And so how do we make sure that our younger generations are seeing this as a viable opportunity to go work for state or local government? And so we have, as they have programming for undergraduate students, we've built a professional certificate in California government and policy. And so not only local learners, which we've enrolled people from all around the state of California, but also our undergrad students can take these courses. They're 4 courses that will actually end up with a reception at the state capitol and networking opportunity. And there's guest speakers from lobbyists to budget, folks that are leading the state on these efforts. And so it's another way to make sure that, yes, I have a political science degree, or yes, I work in an industry that would benefit from government or relational, affairs. But then there's this opportunity to really focus in on how does the actual mechanism of the state government work and learning from people who are actually driving those conversations now.
I mean, that hands-on piece is just so important to, there's just, we're seeing all these reports saying, what you study is one thing. One of the most determining factors of earning a salary commensurate with having that degree is having real world experience applying what you learn. And so that's really cool that you're doing that. I'm also hearing you, specifically when you talk about that degree plus, I'm always think of in a lot of states, the K-12 systems where they have diploma endorsements. You have a seal of biliteracy in many states, including California. You have in some states a civic seal that can be added to the diploma, and which gets us very much into the world of AACRAO members and registrars and enrollment management professionals. And and in some cases, registrars saying, yeah, I want to support innovation. And all this innovation has given me a lot of anxiety. I'm curious, when you talk about this stuff with your registrar, what is this anxiety inducing? Is this, what are those conversations like?
Yeah, so we have a great relationship with our registrar here at UC Merced. And we've actually had a post-bac teaching credential since the start of our division. And that was kind of the first program to really address the PK-12 teacher shortage in California. And that program, uses financial aid. It's Title IV funded. And so it needs and requires the support of our Office of Financial Aid and Scholarship, but also our registrar, because the courses are scheduled through our SIS here on campus, the main campus, so that aid can be dispersed. And so it really leverages that main campus mechanism for it. And so early on, it's been, initially it's a small group, it wasn't too much. And now as the program grows, yeah, sure, there's probably some, anxiety inducing conversations around increased workload and the number of students we're credentialing, but thinking really around how do we recognize on a transcript or a learner record, as one example to making sure that when someone graduates from UC Merced, but also earns a teaching credential through UC Merced, that's appropriately reflected on the transcript when they go to access those information. All the way down to just how do we, schedule the courses? How do we get the learner records to match up so that when students are in a 35 to 41 unit, program, that they're also able to leverage certain tools like a degree audit or course planning and things like that. And so there's a lot of work we do with our registrar to think about the systems and processes that we put in place so that a student can register, so that a student can navigate through their program efficiently. And that's really a large post-bac certificate program that would almost mirror more like a master's degree type program. We have our own SIS system, where we also enroll students through certificates and shorter courses on our end. And so it's been about how do we not recreate the wheel, but keep things consistent. We've had work through our degree completion program that has, given opportunity to fund positions in the registrar that certainly help and aid in those conversations. But as we continue to grow our programs, these are all going to be, we're introducing a new credential here shortly in PK3. And so how do we implement that? What are the stress points it's going to put on the registrar's office? And how can we help alleviate those collaboratively, where we're supporting a campus community environment, so that we're not creating redundant resources or processes that would just create administrative barriers down the line.
I mean, so well put, and that is just such an amazing place to end. Michael Pierick, UC Merced, just thank you so much for sharing the amazing work that you have going on out there in California.
Thanks, Noah. Appreciate to be here.
Absolutely, and thank you for taking the time to engage with this episode of AACRAO's Credential Chats, and have a badge-worthy week. Until next time, everybody. So long.